Hello and welcome to Divorce on Planet Earth, Kate Scharf's real-world advice for well-intentioned humans. I'm your co-host, Jane Prelinger.
And I'm Kate Scharf.
Hello, Kate.
Hey, Jane.
So, Kate, this is part 6, the final installment of our special series called The Divorced Parents Pledge, 30 Things You Should Promise Your Kids. So, Kate, this is our final installment of this, and we're going to go back in the future to our regular sort of subject matter.
Yeah, regular format for the next episode.
Right. Okay, here we go. Divorced Parents Pledge, Clause 26. It's ridiculous to expect you to turn down a new iPhone. So if one of us thinks the other is trying to buy you, we'll take it up with them, or better yet, breathe and let it go.
I remember when my parents were divorced, you know, they had very different philosophies about parenting, and this isn't about stuff, but I think it captures the idea. When I was with my father, I was not expected to make my bed in the morning. I know it sounds ridiculous, but what the reason for that is they had a housekeeper and they wanted me at breakfast. That was the priority. They just wanted me at breakfast. And my mother, wasn't that she didn't want me at breakfast, she just a different style of parenting, and she hated that I wasn't asked to make my bed.
Yeah.
And she said, do it anyway. Right? I wasn't going to do it.
Oh, at your dad's house, do it anyway?
She's like, when you're there, do it anyway. I totally understand why she said that. And I think now in her, you know, with the perspective of age, she wouldn't, but I completely understand it. On the other hand, it just made me feel like I caught in the middle because, first of all, I can't control, you know, my parents, the differences in their parenting style. And I really didn't want to make my bed.
Of course.
I really just would have preferred that she handle things the way she handled them on her time and leave me alone. Yeah. But the stuff thing is kind of the same. You know, some parents give gifts when it's not a birthday, or, you know, sometimes one parent feels that the other is indulgent. Usually when that happens, it's always been true. Or sometimes it's a part of the divorce dynamic where one parent is feeling a little insecure and then sort of overcompensates with gifts. But whatever the reason, it is so much more difficult for your kids to know how unhappy you are about the indulgence. And it isn't reasonable to expect them to turn down something fun because A, they want it, and B, it would hurt the other parent's feelings. I think it's important to remember that kids can really get used quite easily to living in households with different values and different styles of parenting, different ways of disciplining. And the best way to sort of get yourself in there, right, to have the influence you want over your child and to impart the values that are important to you is to parent as your own best self when they are with you, and let the other parent do the same.
Well said. Yep.
You know, I sometimes say to parents about this, you know, when one is upset about things going on at the other's household, I say, look, when you were married, you still had these differences.
Right.
Sometimes you'd fight about them, sometimes you'd capitulate. But if let's say your ideas are red and her ideas are white, then when you were married, everything was just kind of pink. You never got to really parent the way you wanted to, and yet you sort of undermined, you know, the other parent's way. Now you get to be red. You get to be your best shiny scarlet when you're parenting. Of course, not every second, but you get to have a household with the culture that you want. You can't change the other one anyway. So what your child is getting is sort of the undiluted you.
That's a really good point, Kate.
Yeah.
And I'm also willing to bet that when we were the children of divorced parents, we were not offered iPhones.
We were not offered iPhones.
Because they would not be invented.
They had
for
not
many
been invented
decades.
yet. And sort of, I feel like even if they had been, we wouldn't have been.
There's no iPhone for me.
Because I think we have underdeprived children now.
Yes.
Okay.
On to clause 27. We won't pay singular attention to the one of you who acts most upset. Even if you're quiet, you might be having a rough time too.
Yeah. I mean, the point here is really that children have their own ways of coping with the stress of divorce and expressing their upset. And it's really common for kids to take different roles. I mean, they do that in the family anyway. And it's not necessarily what you would expect of them. You know, it's not necessarily their characteristic way of working. So it's often the one who is, makes the most noise that gets the most attention, and the other one feels a little lost. So just bear in mind that even if they deny it, your separation divorce is having a major impact on your child.
It's such an important reminder. So on to clause 28. Oh, here's a good one. We won't grill you about time with your other parent. We know the difference between asking if you had a nice weekend and asking if you ate crap for dinner again.
Right. Kids don't even like telling you what they did at school, right? Everybody says the same thing. I drive the carpool because that's the only time I ever get any information, when they don't have to look at me in the face or they're talking to their friends in the backseat.
Yeah.
My kids tended to share more with me at bedtime when they were a little sleepy.
Yeah.
And off
their defenses were down.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But they'd like to do it on their own terms. And, I don't really like talking about work at the end of the day. I mean, not that I would ever share any personal information, but, even if it's a collegial issue, because I just don't feel like I'm worn out, right? So I might do it another time. Kids are the same. And when it comes to coming back from a weekend with the other parent or their time with the other parent, it's that, but like on crack, like on steroids, because they really, really do need in some ways to keep those experiences encapsulated. Yeah. Especially if they're positive.
Yes.
And they don't want to feel disloyal, and they don't want to feel their time was attacked, and they absolutely don't want to hear the badly disguised part of you that is fishing for information. For whatever reason you're fishing, whether it's because you want to know, if the girlfriend was there that weekend, or whether your ex is spending a lot of money or making it more fun than you are, or, just because you're curious. If you graduate to the phase of the divorce where you're curious because you want to know how your kids, just sort of like, in the innocent way, you would say, how was it at your friend's house? Like, what'd you do? If you can graduate to a kind of mild interest that is really about your kids, that's fine, But if they don't want to answer, let it drop. And as the clause says, they really know the difference between a question that is a badly disguised, fishing expedition, and one that's sort of not that important and basically like a way of reconnecting.
Yeah. Clause 29. We won't forget the profoundly unfair truth that this divorce, which you didn't choose, don't deserve, and have no power to stop, has hit you hardest of all. You're the one who has to schlep back and forth between homes, and you have the right to express outrage, free from worry that we'll become hurt, defensive, or angry.
I don't have a lot to say about this one. I really do think that because divorce is so common and because it's so hard on us, the adults, we forget what we are asking of our kids. And, it reminds me of, in the old days, they used to say that children didn't feel pain in the same way. Like infants, like when the circumcision debate, there was this actually people saying, but infants don't feel the pain of that.
Right. Because they won't remember.
And we wanted to, because they won't remember. I'm like, well, if they don't remember, then why do I spend all this money on preschool toys? And we wanted to believe it. Yeah. Because we don't want to think of ourselves as, as causing pain to our kids. I actually have no idea what infants experience. Right. But I can't imagine that it isn't awful in the way that pain is for us. So I just think it's important to remind ourselves of this, even though it seems self-apparent. Is it okay with you if I read clause 30? Because this one is just so important to me.
Please, Kate.
So this is the final clause in the pledge. Your friends with married parents are sick of watching old family videos and hearing tales of the day they were born. Sometimes it must feel like you didn't come from anywhere. So we'll make sure to tell you fond and funny stories about how we met, fell in love, and had you. We'll compliment the good traits we still see in each other, and we'll tell you how, even if we had a magic wand, we wouldn't undo anything because we can't imagine a life in which we are not your parents. I'm just going to leave it there.
Yeah.
So we've come to the end of this series, this special series, the Divorced Parents Pledge, and if we may revisit it in the future, add new clauses. But as you mentioned earlier, we're going to return to we have sort of two formats. Our main format is the podcast that you and I do together, where we answer a reader or listener's question with the name disguised and kind of riff on it.
And let me remind you all, please, we want to take your questions.
We really do. We need to know what you're wondering about. Yeah. And sometimes we get the same question in a variety of forms, and we sort of mush them together and answer it as a theme. So now that you have, and the other format is occasionally I will do like a little special topic thing on my own. And you're not there. Sorry.
But I listen eagerly, Kate.
Okay. Okay. So as I've now said 6 times, usually we end with spliticisms, but I'm going to end this final installment of this series in the way I've ended each previous one, by reminding our listeners of a really important point. I'll do it one last time. As we often say, as we kind of hammer at over and over again, this is really tough stuff, this divorce business, and you're only human. So when you screw up, and you will screw up, own it. Use the moment as a learning opportunity. Apologize if you can do it authentically, but don't self-flagellate. Don't go over the top, because that'll make your kids feel crappy. And finally, give yourself a big, big break. Use these moments that you're not proud of as an opportunity to learn something and maybe model something and to grow. These are transformative opportunities for you and your kids, and maybe even for your ex. It's not unheard of to apologize to an ex. Because it's really true. Your ongoing effort to keep your children's needs at the forefront of your thinking, and to take the high road with your ex without being a punching bag, not to lean too hard on your kids or pull them into an alliance with you against your ex, to fight all the natural but the destructive impulses that we all have during divorce, means so much more to your children. That it protects them, it teaches them, and it makes them feel more safe and cared for than you having to work too hard to get it exactly right in every moment.
Kate, as I always say when I listen to you, words to live by. So thanks for listening to Divorce on Planet Earth, Kate Scharf's real world advice for well-intentioned humans. We invite you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Divorce for Humans. That's Divorce, the number 4 humans, and on YouTube at Divorce on Planet Earth. That way you'll know when we have a new blog post, video, or podcast. Speaking of blogs, you can read Kate's at divorceonplanetearth.com. And if you have a general divorce question or an idea for a show topic, please write to us at info@divorceonplanetearth.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we promise not to share your personal information, including real name and email address. Please remember that the ideas we share here can never fully address any one listener's specific situation, and are not offered as therapy or divorce coaching, and are not intended as a substitute for clinical services. Divorce on Planet Earth is produced by Eric Paguero. Our music was composed by Ben Kaunitz. I'm your co-host, Jane Prellinger.
And I'm Kate Scharf.
We'll talk to you next time.